and a very pleasant good evening to all of you out there. My name is James Donnelly, and for those of you who are maybe tuning in for the first time, this will be a vlog, podcast, whatever you want to call it, in regards to WWE. My newest, well, it's not new, but it's my newest fan obsession, if you will. So, some of you who have tuned in to my last vlog, which was in regards to how I'm not really going to be talking about comic books anymore. Well, one of you, I think, had commented on the fact that you'd like to hear my thoughts about WWE and what's going on in wrestling and or sports entertainment. So I figured I'd come on tonight after a pretty fantastic weekend of great programming, which is unusual to have two. Well, usually the NXT specials are better than the main roster ones, but and I think that did hold true still, but Survivor Series was actually pretty damn good. So let's first talk about NXT Takeover Toronto. That was, I mean, just it was a really fun show from bell to bell. Bobby Roode with that entrance, oh my god! I mean, that was something else. I mean, it's nice how WWE programming can, do the, we're going to take kind of the more, we're going to set up something earlier on in the evening, and then later off we're going to kind of flip that on its head, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So first we had Bobby Roode versus Ty Dillinger, so it's in Toronto, so it's going to be nice, and it's a nice Canadian battle. So, and of course, Bobby Roode, he's not he's not the most entertaining in-ring wrestler, as far as his moveset, things of that nature, but my God, he is glorious when it comes to his promos, his his demeanor inside the ring is just fantastic, and you had a feeling from the get go. I mean, when you had you had that entire chorus singing his theme song, it was just beautiful. It was, dare I say, even better than Takeover Brooklyn with Shinsuke and the violin soloist that was playing, that was kind of riffing on his theme before he came out. The match itself, again, wasn't a huge highlight of the evening, but it was a good way to kick it off because they had some pretty significant matches to get through. And this was just, obviously a rivalry match. So, and the fact that they're both Canadian and doing it in Toronto made it all the more special. So, hats off to Hunter and everybody involved in the putting together of that match. Then we move on to Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Tournament with Authors of Pain versus TM61. I honestly thought going into this that TM61 might win. There were some pretty significant indicators that they would. It was, this is where I think, again, NXT does take the cake over main roster events, is because you really are on the edge of your seat. You don't know really who's going to come out on top. But of course, Authors of Pain did. Paul Ellering, suspended in the match, and of course, when he drops down that the steel chain from inside the ring, and whoever it was, Akam or Razor, grabs it, and then he got massively hit, and when he got that hit from whichever member of TM61 it was, that chain just went flying into the audience, and so of course, if it's real, somebody probably got hurt pretty bad. I doubt that really happened. I doubt anybody got hurt, but still, it's just one of those things. Like, you don't really want that type of thing to happen, where it just goes flying into the audience, because if it's just cheap plastic that looks real, then obviously you're messing with the illusion, if you will. So, but of course, Authors of Pain took it. TM61 put up a hell of a fight. Really, dynamic, in-ring style. And then we're going to skip over the next one, and we're going to talk about Asuka versus Mickie James. Now, to those of you who are, again, watching me for the first time, or even watching, or even those who have watched me in the past, have no idea when I started watching. Probably. I started watching after SummerSlam 2015, literally the next Raw. One of my very best friends is a huge WWE fan, and he really got me into pro wrestling again. Because when I was a kid, I watched. I remember eagerly anticipating WrestleMania 2 coming on HBO, I believe. HBO or Showtime, and that was a big deal when I was 10. Because that summer, I would have been 10 years old. So, and of course, once you get into your early teens and you start to like, oh, this, it's fake, it's so fake, and then I think people who get older and they start getting back into it, it's like, well, of course it's fake. Would you want people to act like this in real life? My God, these people would be locked up. So anyway. So I'm still relatively new to this, and I haven't really deep dive. I have obviously WWE Network, but haven't really done the deep dive into the older stuff to kind of get all like the 90s stuff. My wife, who is upstairs right now, doing her own thing. She's talking with one of her friends on Skype. I wanted her to be here for this, but she's also really tired too. So, because she had been watching and had been into it for longer than I have. So the fact that that she kind of rediscovered with me was really fun. Because she recognized some of the older people that would come back, and I would be like, oh, who is that? And she'd be like, oh, that's this person. So that's fun. So we've been kind of discovering the newer people together. So I didn't know who the hell Mickie James was. Obviously I knew, okay, well, she must have been a big deal. She's from, the 2000s era, the early aughts era, where that, of course, I wasn't watching. Before it became Divas, when it was still women's wrestling, and fought against like Lita and Trish Stratus and them. So of course comes back to take on Asuka. Now, obviously, Mickie James is not going to beat Asuka. You don't get somebody out of quote unquote retirement just to come in for a championship match. Because she's not going to stick around. She might. Again, who knows? Every website that I go to, they have a different theory or a different rumor that they've heard from somebody or other about whether or not somebody's going to be hanging around or whether or not somebody's on the, Vince's, kind of kill list, if you will. So that was kind of a no-doubter for me, even though there were some good false, there were some false falls. I do like that. I like it when they just do a good job of building suspense, a better job, I think, than again the main roster in NXT. So, and Asuka just kicks ass, man. She's awesome. I love her. I like that kind of chaotic neutral that she has, the vibe that she has going in regards to she's not really a heel, but she's not really a face. She's just like, I come in, I kick ass, and I look good doing it. So again, it was a good match. It went on for the length of time that it needed to go on, and I felt that the ending was a little abrupt, but, getting in that Asuka lock, it didn't quite seem like she had it. But, I think, Mickie probably had a bit of ring rust to shake off, so she didn't really show it too much, but, Jesus, God in heaven, those pants that she was wearing, I don't know what anybody... I'm surprised she wasn't falling all over herself during that match. How does she not get those legs caught up in those ginormous flares? It didn't make, I think a poor costuming choice, but whatever. You gotta do it big because it's WWE. I'm going to talk about Shinsuke versus Samoa Joe in the sense that I know what happened. I'm a little bummed, but, Shinsuke's got to lose sometimes. I don't know how it ended, because for whatever reason, I don't know if anybody out there had the same problem that I did. Probably not. I didn't see anything about it online or anything like that. But my NXT or my WWE Network connection, every time, or just as the match was about to start, literally, they were just about to introduce Shinsuke. They'd just gotten through with their Samoa Joe introduction as the challenger, and it immediately bumped to the pre-show. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm like, oh, well, I did have it on pause a couple of times because I was making dinner, so on and so forth, and, I had to kind of run back and forth. So I went back to the event on the network, fast forwarded all the way to that same point and even a little bit past it, because there was like 24 minutes to go when it reset, and then I went to like 22 minutes after the match would have started, and guess what? It did the same fucking thing. I was furious. I was livid. I was so mad because I'm like, oh fuck, I'm just gonna have to wait and see. And of course, I didn't feel like getting around to it today. I was just so pissed off. In regards to how how shitty the feed, whatever my issues were. So I didn't get to see that match. I still haven't seen it, but again, I know that Samoa Joe won. Again, little bit bummed. I'm sure it was a great match because Shinsuke and Samoa Joe put on a really good show. They did it Brooklyn, and the whole suspense with putting Shinsuke on the shelf for however many weeks that they did that for. It's just, with NXT, there's just far better storytelling because obviously they've got a smaller roster. And that's kind of hurt them in the sense of how their women's division is because they have to bring in, these retirees or part-time or whatever you want to call them to take on Asuka because she's beaten everybody and is still undefeated. But the next challenger is, the next real challenger, because it's not going to be Billie Kay. It's not going to be I want to say Royce, the other Aussie. It's not going to be Liv Morgan. It's not going to be Aaliyah. It's going to be Ember Moon. Ember Moon, she's got the move. She's got the physique. She's got everything that you need to take on Asuka and to take her down. So I think that they're building to that. It's just, since she was just introduced a couple of months back, she's not a bona fide contender yet. But she will be. Trust me. That's just the way it's going to go down. But I really want to talk, about the match of the night. I think again, since I didn't see Shinsuke and Samoa Joe, the match of the night, to me, definitely belonged to the Revival versus DIY. What a great match. Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Wrestling, they're so fluid in their movements. That if you're looking to find out what kind of wrestler I personally really like I love the Cruiserweight division. The Cruiserweight Classic Series was just absolutely phenomenal. From beginning to end, there wasn't a match that I was bored with. And it was just such a great showcase for extraordinary talent. And it's one of the matches that I look forward to every week on Raw, when they've put in a Cruiserweight match. And now that they're getting 205 Live, again, strictly for just Cruiserweights, that's going to be even better because they're going to have an entire show devoted to just their storytelling, which is going to be awesome. I can't wait for that. Because, people like Cedric Alexander, like Rich Swann, like Noam Dar, like Brian Kendrick, or like TJ Perkins, or, like Gran Metalik, Kota Ibushi. They're going to be, their matches are so dynamic and so fun. And that's one of the things that I love about Tomas, about DIY, is that they're cruiserweights, and then they're fighting Dash and Dawson, who are definitely, they don't fuck around. The 2 out of 3 falls is always, it's a fun gimmick to have, because it starts, the next match starts pretty much immediately. Within reason, of course. They got to really sell the injury of the pinfall or the submission. So when Johnny got the Shatter Machine that first time, it was like, oh man, I really didn't see that coming. Because that seemed to come out of nowhere, because he was going to do the slingshot spear, and he just got lifted up, and then boom. That was fucking beautiful. It was great. And I mean, and Dash and Dawson and Tommaso and you know and Ciampa and Gargano, they're I mean, as you'll hear Corey say a billion times during any of their matches, cohesive units, and they truly, really and truly are. They are amazing what they can do together, and that's what's so fun about them, is that they work so well together. And whatever that, you know, that kind of double finishing move is that DIY has is something that I just love. So the second pinfall, when they hit that, the knee to the back and the kick to the face at the same time, it's it is a thing of beauty. And so now we've got, you know, all the false finishes and everything that makes wrestling really great and fun. I mean, you're really like, yeah, you know, I was so on the edge of my seat during that match. It was just fantastic. And of course, when the Revival try to mimic, try to copy DIY's finishing move, and they fuck it up, of course. And then DIY brings out the Shatter Machine, and it's like, yes! I mean, I was like jumped up out of my seat. I was like, yes, that was so fucking awesome. And then, of course, the double submission was just gorgeous, and I am so excited to see the how long they're going to keep the belts on DIY. I'm hoping it's going to be a while, because, you know, their ongoing feud with the Revival, because, you know, eventually they're going to have to take on Authors of Pain, and that's going to be a fun match, I think. And, you know, they're going to have to go up against, you know, Sanity, and I doubt that Austin Aries is going to try for another tag partner. Who knows? I mean, his tag with Roderick Strong was decent, but I mean, you know, I don't think it'll really be a thing. I think Austin is better on his own. So aside from the obvious technical difficulties that I was experiencing at the end of that match, or at the end of the event, Takeover Toronto, I think, was a rousing success. You know, if for nothing else than that fantastic tag team champ match. It was just phenomenal. I mean, so good. Good in-ring storytelling, good in-ring action, great in-ring action for a lot of it. So, thumbs up, way up for Takeover Toronto. So now on to tonight's Survivor Series. Survivor Series had one of my favorite endings ever for my favorite endings thus far in any pay-per-views have been last year's, or this past March, I think it was March, Money in the Bank. The ending where Ambrose won, and then Ambrose got the title. Raw was in Phoenix the next day, and myself, my wife, and my best friend who got me back into it, he came out from California to come with us and go to see that night of Raw, and that was a fucking great weekend. So fun. We all got together and watched it, and that was a great finish. That was pre-brand split though, and we got to see, and just that night at Raw, we got to see a great Sammy versus KO. I'm I'm a big Sammy fan, and my friend, he's a big KO fan, and I like KO a lot too. I'm a little bit cooler on him now than I used to be, but we'll get more into that a little bit later. Anyway, so my favorite finishes thus far have been the finale of Money in the Bank, where Ambrose cashes in on Rollins and gets the title. Then SummerSlam, the worst next day, but when Finn won the Universal Championship, because my guy is Finn. Finn's my guy, and Finn's my wife's guy too, in a lot more ways than one. She's got such a huge crush, and so do I. He's definitely one of my most significant man crushes. He's Irish. He's a man after my own heart. He's a Lego guy, and he's such a dynamically talented wrestler, and I love Finn. I love Finn Balor so much. Anywho, so Survivor Series got off to a bit of a messy start. I'm sort of interested where they're gonna take this thing with who assaulted Nikki before the match. The obvious suspect would be Natalya, because that way she could be in ring rather than just being the coach. But I don't know if that's really in character or not. We'll see. But I did not think that the 5-on-5 female women's match was anything really spectacular. I thought that for one thing, it was way too short. The other thing is, other than the ending, it was totally unmemorable. Because I can't tell you who knocked off Sasha, or who. How exactly Nia. Well, I think Nia. I think she tapped out to the disarm her from Becky. I didn't. I get that. Bayley had to be the winner at the end. She had to get the final pinfall for Team Raw, because she was accused of being the weak link. And then it's decent storytelling. It just wasn't decent wrestling, because they didn't let the stories really build or unfold like they do with the guys, because Vince. And to have Charlotte assault Bayley as soon as the match was over, and Team Raw had won, she's like, okay, fuck you, and kind of like screaming about, this is my spotlight and everything like that. That's great. It's such perfect heel work for Charlotte. She's really come into her own in a lot of ways. At first, I thought it was just fucking annoying, but now I can see, she's really kind of a genius in there, and she's not the greatest on the mic, but there's very few people in the women's division that are really good on the mic. I would say that of all of them, I think Becky is probably the strongest on the mic. Sasha's good, but she's a little too cute cardy. And I don't know if she honestly works better as a heel or as a face. I mean, obviously, right now she's got to stay face until she gets the belt back. Because this whole 50-50 thing that they've got going on with Charlotte, it's like, okay, well, we're going to give Sasha the belt on Raw, and then she's going to lose it in the next pay-per-view. So, and that's getting a little bothersome because they got to keep Charlotte's streak, her perfect streak as far as pay-per-views are concerned, defending her title, going along. So then we move on to the IC title match. And I mean, there was no way in hell that Sammy was going to win. I mean, Sammy's just not, he's not Vince's type of wrestler, first of all. You know, he's not big. You know, he's not extremely well defined. He looks kind of normal, but of course, then when you see him, I mean, he's very much. He's kind of the guy I think that Vince thinks he can just put anywhere, because his matches are pretty consistently entertaining. So, I mean, I just knew that Miz was going to win because he's the Miz. And it wouldn't have made sense, you know, and I pretty much knew that Miz was going to win last week on SmackDown when, and yeah, it's okay to just call it SmackDown, okay? Guys, let's not run the SmackDown live thing into the ground. We get it. It's live now, okay? It's been live for a while. So that's something that they can throw away from their in-ring mic work, okay? They don't need to cut any more promos and specifically say SmackDown Live. In fact, I also wish they would get rid of sports entertainment and just say, you know, it's, you know, yeah, it's World Wrestling Entertainment. I get it, but let's keep the wrestling thing alive as opposed to just putting it sports entertainment. So anyway, off track, back on track. Terrific match. You know, it seems to be the trend lately that when they're in, well, I mean, I know that Vince doesn't really realize that Canada is an entire country. But, you know, he figures, well, okay, if we get a Canadian up there, they're going to get a big reaction as opposed to being in their home city. So, you know, if they were in Montreal or something like that and have Sammy lose there, that would, you know, but it still fits the same thing that they've been doing before, which was the idea that, I mean, it seems like lately they've been having a lot of people lose in their hometowns as opposed to win in their hometowns, which seems to kind of have been the standard. Like one of my favorite older matches that I have watched, that I've taken the time to watch, was the CM Punk Cena match. I still call it the Rosemont Horizon. It's technically Rosemont, Illinois. It's just outside of Chicago, very close to my hometown. It's the Allstate Arena technically, but I will still always refer to it as the Rosemont Horizon. And when, you know, that was the day before Punk's his contract was up, and, you know, so he went in and won. So, and CM Punk, mad respect for. You know, he's one guy whose matches I will go back and watch on Raw or in the pay-per-views on WWE Network, because hometown guy, he's just that kind of thing with me. So anywho, so yeah, they seem to really be liking making you know, home area wrestlers lose in their home area. So, you know, I'm kind of getting sick of the Sammy hurting his leg gimmick that's been pulled out a lot lately. Well, in the times that we've seen him, because it hasn't been a lot. Because again, Vince doesn't know what to do with this guy, because he's too heavy for a cruiserweight, and he's he doesn't have the physical qualities that Vince likes in his wrestlers. Even though he's good on the mic, he's amazing in the ring, and is just an all-around entertaining guy. I mean, he's Sami Zayn. He's fucking cool. So again, I knew it was going to be, there's going to be something involved, some cheating involved, and so the ringing of the bell, that was it was a good fake out. It was a good thing, but I'm like, no, I realized at home, like, no, that's not the one. This is, it's definitely Maurice is fucking with it in some way, and of course, Mike flips him over, grabs him by the tights, and then small packages him to retain. So what I'm hoping will happen, although it wasn't really indicative in the kind of cutaways to to Stephanie and Mick, because I was, when when there's that whole thing about, fight as if your jobs depend on it, because they do, and so I was kind of hoping that she'd be more kind of flipped out about Sammy losing, and that, maybe Mick would be trying to kind of calm her down, but she'd just be so fucking mad and everything like that, and she'd be really upset about it, and then she'd want to be like, well, I gotta cut, we gotta cut some dead weight here, so Sammy, you're fired. And then but then something else happened later that was a lot more interesting, that could lead to the same type of thing that I'm going to talk about. But anyway, it was a good match. It was a solid match. The outcome was never really in doubt. There were a couple of good false finish moments that it was like, okay, maybe. They have surprised me before. I thought at Hell in a Cell, I thought for sure that Sasha was going to retain, but I should have known better. Moving on to the 5-on-5 tag, that was hellaciously fun, because I liked the fact that the New Day, they knocked out whoever. I can't even remember who was the first team out from SmackDown. I don't remember. Anyway, but then Usos came in and got the pinfall over New Day just as quickly, and it was Breezango. Breezango got knocked out almost immediately, and then New Day got knocked out. So it was like, okay, the big guys are out. So I was like, ooh, this is going to get really interesting now. So how I was thinking it was going to happen, surprisingly, Shining Stars got a pretty good amount of time in the ring there. I was a little bit shocked about that. They're trying to build them up as legitimate contenders, and not just this really, really, really awful, stereotype of the heel. They're selling fake timeshares and everything like that. It's like, okay, yeah, that's what we need right now, Vince. We need more. We need scheming Latinos in our wrestling. It's the whole USA shit's got to go anyway. This whole xenophobic thing about, with Rusev and everything like that, shitting on America. I get it. It harkens back to the old days of, Iron Sheik and everything like that, and whatever. It's stupid and it's got to go. It has no place here and now. Okay, we've got to start thinking outside the. But American Alpha never really took off tonight, which I thought was kind of surprising. Um, you know, it's always funny. I always find myself a little bit shocked when I start thinking to myself, you know what this match needs? It needs a little bit more Heath Slater. Because that's, prior to the brand split, that's never a thought I would have had. Because when he was, when he and Bo and Curtis and Adam Rose were the fucking social outcasts, I couldn't stand them. They were just so boring. But now, Heath coming out and, with his 19 kids or whatever, and his above ground pool and his double wide, and it's, he just really sold himself and, became a great face. So that he's been tremendously fun to watch his evolution since the brand split. So, it's just, it was a solid match, but the finale was really, really excellent, because what I could have sworn was going to happen, was that Sheamus was going to get taken out outside the ring, and then Cesaro was going to take somebody else out. He's going to take whoever, and of course it ended up being the Usos. And he was, going to take somebody out, and then it was going to be, but Cesaro was going to get, double teamed, or something shady was going to happen with the Usos with their new, the new heel persona that they're doing pretty well at, and he was going to get screwed over, and then they were going to lose, and Cesaro would get blamed. And again, the whole kind of Sammy thing, the idea that I had about Sammy would come into play in regards to, well, Cesaro, again, he's going to get fired because he's the one that, he got the pinfall or the submission or whatever, or he was on the receiving end of that, and then he would then be fired or let go or whatever, and then SmackDown would grab him up. So, but by having him and Sheamus still being the odd couple, which I did not think in a million years was going to work with these two, it is actually working in a really fun way, and it's not just grown on me. I've actually grown to appreciate it for what they're trying to do by doing this, by selling them as the odd couple team, but being the odd couple team that can really dominate. And Cesaro, he's always been one of the, at least in the times that I've been watching since he's come back, has really kind of been one of the unsung heroes of WWE. So it's like, get this guy, a belt, and soon. Shit. Anyway, sorry, I missed the. I threw my gum out and missed the garbage can. Anyway, you don't care. But to see Cesaro, to see Sheamus come in with the Brogue Kick to knock out one of the Usos, and then to have Cesaro, do that, like the 40 rotation swing was awesome. I just loved it so much, and and to have Sheamus come in and save Cesaro from from one of the Jimmy or Jay, whoever it was, getting out of the sharpshooter, was just, again, it's evidence that they want this team to go places. the Sheamus and Cesaro team. So I'm hoping they can come. I don't know what their tag name would be. It doesn't really matter. I mean, they still got Heath Slater and Rhino. I'd prefer it if they came out as Beauty and the Man Beast, but whatever, it works. It's Sheamus and Cesaro is fine, or Cesaro and Sheamus. Like, I think that a fun thing that they could do is change the name of the team each week to, okay, well, it's Cesaro and Sheamus, and then Sheamus and Cesaro. Whatever. It'd just be a kind of a recurring thing. Anyway, a really fun match it ended up being. And of course came the Cruiserweight, which once Sammy lost, again, wasn't in doubt. Okay, it's staying on Raw, because if SmackDown is going to be keeping the IC title, then there's no reason for the Cruiserweight division to change hands either. So, again, the Brian Kendrick, he's really. I mean, he's a great heel. He was. I mean, literally moved me to tears when Daniel Bryan came out, and I keep wanting to put a T on the end of Daniel Bryan's name, because Chicago Chris Bryant. So every once in a while, if you hear me say Daniel Bryan's name, it might sound like I'm saying Daniel Bryan, but I don't mean to. It's just, Chris Bryant, MVP, National League, Cub, World Series, won. That's different thing. Anyway, yes, I'm from Chicago, in case you didn't tell already with my talk about CM Punk. But, so again, I mean, Brian Kendrick makes such a terrific heel for the Cruiserweights, and I think his work is largely unappreciated. I think that the Cruiserweight division is largely unappreciated unless it's Cedric Alexander or Rich Swann, because Cedric's obviously, he's down in NXT right now having his feud with Andrade Cien Almas, which is a good feud. I'm enjoying that too, but Cedric, his match, I want to say it was against Kota Ibushi. That was like one of the match of the year entries, easy. That was such a fucking great match in the CWC. But Rich Swann is so over. But of course, they don't have anybody else from SmackDown who could legitimately compete in the Cruiserweight division. So the ending of that match is where I come back to the Sammy thing. Because obviously, when it seemed like, well, it could kind of go either way, then Baron Corbin came in and, beat the hell out of Kendrick. He smacked Brian Kendrick, and then, of course, then put, Kalisto into End of Days, and then there's that backstage stuff that happened with, Kendrick won by DQ, and Corbin got the little kind of sort of talking to by Daniel at backstage there. So I have a feeling that what's going to happen now is a trade is going to happen, and they're going to trade Baron Corbin for Sami Zayn, so that first of all they can get Zayn off Raw, so he doesn't have to be around Kevin Owens anymore, because that story is obviously played out really to not its logical conclusion, because its logical conclusion would be to give Sammy a push for the Universal title, but that's not going to happen. Not when you've got Seth and Chris and all the other big dogs of of Raw to contend with. So so that's where I'm putting my faith in that Sammy is going to make his way over to make his way over to SmackDown so that he can stay in contention for the IC title. So that leaves us with two matches: the 5-on-5 men's division, which was really quite good. I was not surprised that SmackDown won. I was surprised at the finale, though, because I didn't think it would be down to... Well, okay. In fairness, I pretty much figured that because they are still... I mean, Vince still is so sold on the idea that Roman is going to end up being the next Cena, that he's going to keep putting him in the best light possible. So, whatever, I get it. I did not expect the Shield reunion that happened mid-match. Really didn't see that. I thought that kind of felt a little bit like it came out of nowhere, but more of like a familiarity thing, because obviously, Dean still has unresolved issues with Seth, and Seth is definitely in the midst of his face turn. He's not fully there yet, and some of the things that he said about the deals that he's worked with Stephanie has me a little bit suspicious that he seems to kind of be setting up for a face turn, but then is going to go back heel. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out yet. I'd prefer Seth to be a heel, I think, deep down, because I think that Seth makes a better heel than he would a face, but I think also at the same time he makes kind of a good, semi-chaotic, again, that whole kind of chaotic neutral thing, where we're not quite sure where he's coming from yet, but since he's getting along with Roman, maybe. But that was really like, I mean, again, I didn't watch the Shield come up together or anything like that, so I'm not invested. I'm not as invested in that storyline. I'm aware that it's obviously a big thing, and obviously we've seen the replays of Seth, smacking Roman around with the chair and everything like that, and beating the crap out of Ambrose, and going full authority. But anyway, that was exciting to see them, the three that put AJ through a table. And I know that's going to get Dean probably a stern talking to, but again, he's Dean, so they can't really do a whole lot with him. They can't really punish him. And they're certainly not going to trade him to, he's not going to Raw. Yeah, I did not think it was going to come down to Bray and Randy and Roman. And they sold the hell out of that ending. It was a great ending to that match. I literally thought Shane O'Mac's eyes were going to... I think they probably did sort of bug out of his head when Roman hit him with that spear when he was about to do the leap of faith or whatever the hell, not when he put Braun through the table. And then, of course, the hands of James Ellsworth, the unsung hero of Team SmackDown tonight. That was such a great little, it's that kind of attention to detail. When they really put the thought into it, they can really make it work really well, and that was perfect to me. It was one of those things like, yes, yeah, dude. I mean, I know that James Ellsworth, I mean, he's, from what I've heard, he's signed with WWE. He's got a contract with them now, and whether or not that's just to be the kind of, the goofy guy, because he's never going to be a legit, threat to anybody. But hey, as long as he's around, I'm fine with it. He's fun. I like his personality, his kind of this kind of he's kind of our surrogate because I think all internally want to be wrestlers. So to be the kind, two fists in a dream thing, that's just fun. It's a fun thing for me. But yeah, I was kind of thinking that it was gonna be AJ. I'm like, well, they're not gonna do AJ versus Roman again because we've seen that a couple of times in two back-to-back pay-per-views. And as good as those matches were, and okay, I get it. You don't like Roman's push, but you can like Roman as long as you don't give him the mic. He needs to stay away from the mic. He needs to get the advocate. I'm not saying Heyman, but just somebody else. Somebody needs to speak for Roman because he's got to be the quiet gunslinger who is coming into town to clean it up. As soon as they shut him up, Roman will, and as soon as they turn him heel, he'll probably start to go over a lot better. But it doesn't look like that's going to be happening anytime soon because they seem very content with keeping Roman as a face and keeping him cutting promos and talking. It's like, oh God, no, not just stop making people hate him. He does pretty good in ring stuff. He's pretty dynamic. So whatever. But Bray, with Randy taking the spear for Bray, I still don't know if Randy's kind of trying to pull kind of a long con thing on Bray or if he really is, a member of the Wyatt family now. But I don't know how this is working out. But that was, Shane O'Mac's stuff. I think he probably had the best moments of the match because, again, there weren't, it's like, of course Roman got, a spear in and some Superman punches. Randy had that great RKO on, was it Seth? Yeah, I think it was. But there was no phenomenal forearm really. If there was, it was kind of in the midst of all of the chaos. We had two code breakers from Y2J tonight. KO got a pop-up power bomb. There, not everybody got their moment to really shine because of some of the internal storytelling that was being told, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. I'd rather sacrifice a wrestler's signature move or finisher for a good in-ring story. Obviously hitting those things helps, but I know we're coming up on the hour here, so anyway, so the men's match, of course, we knew it was going to be longer and more entertaining and more interesting than the women's match because Vince. Even though the women have gotten some better work lately, I think they still need to expand their roster a little bit and get some people off the shelf. They need to figure. I still don't know what the final story on Paige is, if she's ever coming back, or if they're going to release her or whatever. And at this point, it's getting hard to care because Paige coming back right now would seem like I just don't really care anymore because she's been out of the picture for so long and she wasn't even in a competitive picture during that time period. So, when she was like in her most recent appearances, I loved her when I first started watching. She was like one of my favorites. Then that kind of went to, then I started loving Becky. and then I started loving Sasha, and I've been sticking with Sasha, but then I kind of swung back to Becky again, and now Bayley's here, and anywho, Lesnar versus Goldberg, and this is why, again, this has been one of my favorite finales, of any pay-per-view that I've seen thus far, is because it felt like this was Brock's punishment for what happened at SummerSlam with Randy Orton. It's like, no, you know what, Brock? Instead of you being the guy that just the conquering beast, you're gonna be our bitch you're gonna be Goldberg's bitch tonight, and it was fucking glorious. Because you know what, guys, and a lot of people may tune out right now and never want to watch me again. And if you stuck with me this long, I thank you. I legit, straight up hate Brock Lesnar. I think he's boring as shit. I think the F5 is a fun move. I'm bored. I find him incredibly boring. The only thing I like about Brock Lesnar is Paul Heyman. I think he's an asshole in not in just the ring, but probably in reality too. I think he's the kind of guy that just thinks he's king shit because Vince will treat him like king shit. And then Goldberg comes back and he's like, and Goldberg is like, he has, straight up, he makes you want to root for him. And so to give him the 2 spears and the jackhammer was like, that's it. That's all you need to do, and everybody's going to go home insanely happy. And it was just awesome. I loved that ending. I loved it, loved it, loved it. Because one of the things that I love to do in either 2K16 or 2K17, whichever WWE game I happen to be playing, is, one, I love to make Brock Lesnar look like a bitch, and pound him into oblivion. I always try and make him bleed, do a lot of head strikes, and then in reality, fantasy warfare just got real, and it was just like boom, 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 done. We're done, and we're sending everybody home feeling good. So SmackDown, obviously Raw won the night, as far as, from the matches being concerned. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how this week plays out in regards to SmackDown and Raw, and see what happens there, and see if they start to negotiate as far as Baron Corbin and Sammy, and see where they take Sheamus and Cesaro from here, since they saved Raw from losing to SmackDown. I'm really interested to see where NXT is going to go from here. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be great having DIY. It's going to be fun to have Samoa Joe have the title again. And that's it. So I know we're at almost an hour 5. So again, if you stuck with me for this long, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. If this is your first time watching, I don't know what this is going to be called yet. We'll see. But I want to thank you for watching, or thank you for listening if you just have this on in the background somewhere, because obviously it's not very visually interesting. But thank you so much. If you have any comments, don't forget to leave them down there. If you want to subscribe, please feel free. And we hope to see you next time. I'm relatively sure I'll start talking about this in smaller increments on a weekly basis. So, and we'll talk about SmackDown, we'll talk about Raw, we'll talk about NXT, and once they start 205 Live in a couple of weeks, we'll start talking about that too. So, thank you again, and we'll see you next time on whatever the show will eventually be called. It's James Donnelly saying au revoir.